Hello, everybody. Welcome to Michael's Record Collection. I'm very excited to be joined today by Mary Fahl. Mary is a wonderful solo artist, was with the October Project a while back, but now doing her own thing, has a new album coming out called Can't Get It Out of My Head, coming out July 22nd on, is that pronounced Rymar Records?
Rymar, yes.
Mary, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So I always start out with my guests asking about your musical origin story. Were you from a musical family? How did you really start getting interested in music to begin with?
Well, I always sang. My mother says that, she said that I could sing before I could talk, and my family wasn't musical per se, but I was lucky that I was a little kid in the '60s, and I had siblings that were much older than me, in their teens. And so they had great record collections. Each one had sort of their own individual taste. So my sister Joan was 16 when I was a very little girl, and she had all the great female singers of the '60s that I used to sing along with up in her big, beautiful bedroom. And I'd sing along with Petula Clark while my sister was getting ready for dates, and sing along with Dusty Springfield, and sing, you know, and my oldest brother was the folkie in the house, so it was tons of Tom Paxton. That Ramblin' Boy Tom Paxton record is like in my DNA. I listened to that so many times, and he had Peter, Paul, and Mary, and lots of Judy Collins, and then my other brother was the more, you know, rock and roll prog kind of guy. He had the boy music in the house. So in the midst of all of that, and then I would sing along with all of these records. So it was a mishmash of styles. And I think because I didn't get stuck into one particular genre, I think that all sort of went. And then as I got into my teen years, I did high school plays, musicals, and things like that. So I liked all that stuff, and that developed my voice, obviously, and projection and things like that. But when I developed my own taste in music, I started loving things like British folk music. So a lot of the way I sing, if there was sort of a family tree, Sandy Denny would be over here, Linda Thompson would be over here, and then if they spawned, it would be me. And so I always had a very big voice, but I always sort of resonated with British folk singers, and June Tabor is another person I learned a lot about how to interpret a song. I think she's maybe the finest interpreter of songs, in the past 40 years for me, in terms of folk music, things like that. Yeah.
Did you have a first favorite record? I know you had a lot of stuff going on with your siblings, but what was the first one that really grabbed you?
Well, it's funny because a lot of those songs are on this record that this the whole point of the record was, the title is Can't Get It Out of My Head, which means it had grabbed me from the first. I would say the first single I ever bought was the Rolling Stones' Ruby Tuesday. I was very, very young. But the first overall record that just hit me as the most beautiful thing I ever heard was the first Mamas and Papas record.
Okay.
That just washed over me. It was just pure sonic ear candy. And it's funny that I ended up being in a band like October Project that had, two guys and two girls and lots of harmony and things like that. That I would say that was probably the first album that just wowed me.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and ask you, this is not something that happens for every artist. How did you end up doing the theme song for an Anne Rice audiobook?
That's a great story. Out of the blue, I got an email from Anne, and I guess a fan of hers had said, you should listen to Mary Fahl and October Project, because some of our songs on the first record were, let's say, inspired by Anne, some of Anne's books. And we had hoped to get a song into the film version of Interview with the Vampire, but it didn't happen. And then, so all those years later, there's a beautiful email from Anne, and it was like a fan letter. And she said, "I've just found you, and I love your voice." And she ended up putting my voice as a character in her novel, The Wolves of Midwinter. And so I ended up writing the theme song for the book, and because we sort of became email friends, and anyway, and Anne is such a vivid writer that it's easy to write things for her. And then subsequent to that, interestingly enough, she asked me to start to write. So she was shopping around for a production deal for some of her books for television, so that it would be, made into a series. And she said, "I'd love to bring some songs of yours with me when I meet with these producers." So John Lasseller and I just started. We wrote a lot of vampire songs. It's like at a certain point, I said to him, "John, I am just vampired out at this point." So, but I said, and then of course, Anne passed away this year, which was really sad.
Yeah.
Really sad. She was a marvelous woman, a very, very generous soul.
Yeah. You don't often get music on it. I mean, you get sort of some interstitial music on audiobooks, but you don't normally get like full songs like that. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
October Project came along at a time when I was in an extremely hectic time in my life. I didn't get out to the record stores very often. Where did they actually file October Project in the music stores?
Well, it was under O, but I mean, in terms of like genres,
yeah, in the genre, because it kind of.
I mean, I think we were out with the other alternative kind of pop / alternative.
Mm-hmm.
They referred to us as chamber pop, which I thought was kind of appropriate.
Yeah, it's definitely not what the kids were all listening to at the time. So, it's always interesting to me when you find these interesting bands that sort of don't really neatly fit into the niche, one niche or another, and you sort of see what people think. And if you ask 10 different people what kind of music is October Project, you might get 10 different answers.
Yeah. Well, we had sort of subgroups that liked us. We had kind of a little bit of a metal following, believe it or not. Certainly some of the prog people liked us. Obviously, the girl music people liked us. The Sarah McLachlan kind of people liked us. Little bit of a goth following there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was because we did have, I wouldn't call it a goth quality, but it did have a sort of haunting quality to it. Mm-hmm. Especially the first, not the second record so much, but definitely the first record.
Yeah. For sure. Now, you guys put out a couple of albums and disbanded, and I listened to your interview that you did, and I heard you talk about it, and I heard you were feeling that you weren't going to be given an opportunity to write and things of that nature. I wonder, looking back on that, when the band reformed, were you even considered to come back in the band? Were you even asked or consulted at all?
No, and I think they knew I wouldn't. So it was done. We were done. Mm-hmm. And they formed I guess November Project, which didn't last very long. And then they reformed again. And whatever, they're doing what they want to do, and mm-hmm. I'm doing what I want to do. And I felt we had come to the end of the road. I felt that the music had started to become, to my ears, a bit repetitive. Mm-hmm. And it had lost some of that initial passion. The lyrics began to get a little more obscure, a little more studied in that way where I have to know what I'm singing about, mm-hmm. And so I just felt like we made two beautiful records, and that was enough. And I really did need to grow, and I needed to write, and I needed to learn how to write, and I had to do it on my own time, mm-hmm. and that's what I did.
And you were at one point ready to give up the music business, and you had to actually be coaxed back into it. Isn't that right?
I was done. I really I had done the big, so I had gotten signed subsequent to October Project to Sony Classical, which was just wonderful, wonderful in many ways. And, but the record was too broad, it should have been, I think, just honed in a little bit. But, they wanted me to sing with an orchestra. They wanted me to write for movies, and I had to do an aria. And that didn't sit well with all of the radio people out there expecting this third October Project record.
Mm-hmm.
It was what it was. And I think the record stands the test of time. But my contract was not renewed. And so everybody at Sony Classical was fired. There was like tumbleweed going down the hallways there. They gave me all this equipment, like turntables and stuff. And then the BMG guys came in, and yeah, the Germans came in, and my contract wasn't renewed. So kind of got my heart broken, but picked myself up, dusted myself off, and went back out and got made Dark Side of the Moon, got a new manager, made Dark Side of the Moon. And that was just so much fun to do. And just as that record was about to come out, V2 ran out of money, and they folded, and, bought out, folded. I think all that's left of V2 America is like, I always say, like an old guy with a visor over a bunch of accounting books. And that's it. And, they gave us, everybody that had albums coming out, they gave us lifeboats in terms of we could buy back the record. But that was a real blow.
Yeah.
And so disappointing. And that's when I said, I can't do this again. I've gotten my heart broken now twice. And I was older, and I thought I have to, my whole life has been devoted to this. My whole life, all I thought about, like I just was so focused, and I wasn't going to stop until I got a deal, all that. And I had to say, well, I guess that's not going to happen. And so I learned how to grow a garden. To get myself out of that funk, I said, well, I'm going to get every book on biodynamic farming, and I am going to learn how to do this. And it was exhausting, because, exhausting to do. And I had to dig and do this and that. But I made a lot of mistakes. I met a lot of great people. And subsequently I met my husband through all of that. And through that time, wind is going into my head. And, but that was life-changing for me. And it was my husband soon on who said, well, so when's your next show? And I said, no, I'm not gonna. He's like, what do you mean you don't have another show? What's wrong with you? He said, oh, you're going back out. I said, no. And he said, and I said, look, I don't have a band right now. He goes, well, go out by yourself. And I said, no. I'm not a good enough guitar player to do that. I'm not going to throw away my career looking like an amateur. And so he went this summer that we met. He dragged me out, and I mean forcibly dragged me out to every godforsaken open mic night. And I remember the first time he did it, I looked at him like, are you crazy? And then the diva came out of me. I was like, I don't do open mic night. Okay. And the thing is, he said, well, this is good for you. And he just did it. He just bullied me into doing it. And the place I went, it was a nice sort of side of the road kind of restaurant in the middle of nowhere. And I thought, well, nobody's there. Oh, all right. So I went in, and it looked like a nice place. And I thought, oh, maybe a little nice sound system. So I went up, and I did a couple of songs I had written. And this girl looked a little worse for wear and tear, a little tipsy. She sidles up to me at the bar, because the bartender bought me a gin tonic. And I'm sitting there, and she's like, you must be like the biggest Mary Fahl fan in the world. I'm busted. I was so busted. But she didn't know, because, no one knew what I looked like when I was in October Project, because you couldn't really see what I looked like. Yeah. And so, which is good. And so I said, well, I said, Mary Fahl, you don't say. And then her boyfriend sidled up, and he had like a one of those big bushy mustaches, and he's like, you know, there are little moments here and there, just little moments where you sound just like that girl from October.
No kidding.
Yeah. But I was so mad at my husband. And but he was right in that it gave me, because he'd take me out a couple of nights a week, and I would walk into these places where they didn't know who I was. They didn't care. It was me having to get up and do 2 or 3 songs and being able to grab the audience by myself. No band, just me. And people who didn't know my material, anything. And I started to get confident. And then I said, all right, Rich, I'm going to prove this to you that it can't be done. I'm going to book a little show in the middle of nowhere, Connecticut, little coffee house kind of thing. And I'm going to show you that, 3 songs at an open mic night is one thing, but a full 2-hour show, I don't know. So I did it. And I didn't tell anybody about it. I just booked it. I didn't put the word out. But there were some people there that had been fans, October Project fans. And they were so kind, and they said that you have to do this. This is so good. This is so different, because the thing about October Project, and I understand why the record company, for example, didn't want us to speak, because we were all very funny people, and it ruined the vibe of October Project. So they wanted us to be very mysterious,
Yeah, I can see that.
And I understand that. But that's not who my friends would come to see the show when I was with October Project, and they'd say, that's not you. And I'd say, well, it's part one of me. Yeah. It's not all of me. But now, with the show I do now, first of all, I started to tell stories about my family, about my life, about everything. And I wanted to give people a full experience of, being, make you laugh, make you cry, just telling everything. And I could never have done that. It just wouldn't have been appropriate with October Project. And so this whole other performer came out in me. And so it's fun now because, and I got better as a guitar player, of course. And I got myself an electric guitar and a delay and reverb pedal, and that changed my world. And so I have a style that's minimal, but very atmospheric, very. So it's a way to frame my songs and frame what I'm doing, and that is appropriate for my voice.
Yeah.
And
it's great that you brought up the word atmospheric, because that takes me back to your recording The Dark Side of the Moon, which is a daunting task to take on that material, because it can go so incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
And especially if you decide you're going to do it your way, which you did. You didn't, you don't stick to note for note what they did. And yet it is a fantastic interpretation of the material. It works very well. And I just wonder how.
Well, we weren't the only people to cover Dark Side. It's been covered by many bands,
but
and all in their own unique way.
But when you have to do it, was that a daunting task for you, or were you?
That was a group effort, I have to say. I am extremely hands-on with arrangements with my records. I mean, every tiny itty bitty detail, and until a song is absolutely my own, if I can't do it, I won't cover it. And with this, though, the 2 producers, David Werner and Mark Doyle, they had such a clear vision of what they wanted, that it was one of the few times that I wasn't a control freak, because it was nice, because most of the time producers don't have that clear vision. You got to come in with the vision. And I was able to, it let me loose to just, do my own interpretations. And I felt free to try all these different things. But in terms of just how we approached it, in that, imagine if we were doing a tribute record, like with a bunch of other acts, but every song had to be unique. So we didn't also want to do it all in one tone. So every song has its own little world. It's a world within a world. And So I really chalk that up a lot to David and Mark. And and then I brought a lot of things like my chanting that I did and things like that. And I think it was the sensibility that I had that comes through as well. We each came at it from a different viewpoint. And for me, Dark Side of the Moon has such a deeply powerful, for me, a spiritual message. I don't know if Roger Waters intended that exactly, but I always resonated with his lyrics. I think he was kind of a prophet when you think about it. When you go all the way back, he reminds me a little bit of T.S. Eliot. And I feel like what he wrote in the early 70s resonates now in our world more than it did when the record came out. It spoke to the future, and it's so prescient. And the sort of that we live in this world now that's a cacophony of information coming at us 24/7, and this sort of dystopian future that may or may not lie ahead of us. This sort of all this talk of AI and transhumanism and all of this stuff. It's scary, and I was feeling all of those feelings when we were making that record, that where are we going as humans? Are we losing our soul? Are we losing our center as a species? And so I was able to pour all of those feelings into Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
So that's what I think I brought.
Okay. It's I do find myself listening to Animals a lot more these days it is getting scary. It's getting a little bit scary. Let's talk about Can't Get It Out of My Head. This is it's a collection of 10 songs, and you already mentioned these are the songs that got stuck in your head, got part of your DNA growing up, and you already mentioned Ruby Tuesday, which is one of the songs you do here. And Can't Get It Out of My Head is a great double meaning with these are songs that you can't get out of your head. And you start off the album with this just beautiful acoustic guitar driven version of the ELO classic, some keys, some light percussion, some string sounds, hauntingly beautiful version. You led the album with it. You named the album after it. What is it about this song specifically that resonated with you so much?
Well, first of all, I'm a 70s girl, okay? So I love ELO, and I make no bones about it. I mean, I bought the whole retrospective. I just love, I love, and Jeff, I mean, I love ELO. And this was a song that used to play on the jukebox of the Catholic high school, the cafeteria jukebox. And I hated that place. And, I was miserably unhappy and lonely there. And so I used to listen, I used to put a quarter in and listen to it, and it would transport me out of there. And I love watery songs, lots of October Project watery songs, but it's just watery and magical, and I've always wanted to record it. And it's one of the songs that I play live. I can do a solo show and play that song live. And, because it's so nicely written, it works solo or with a big band. It's the mark of a good song.
Yeah. I don't have like a breakdown of all of the credits, but were the strings programmed for this? Because they sound really good. They were real strings.
We had a chamber ensemble, a great little chamber ensemble out of Syracuse, New York. Mark Doyle, my producer, wrote all of the string parts, and he conducted them. So those are real. I don't like synthetic strings. I don't like the way it sounds. When we're putting the arrangements together, we'll use those just to get an idea of it. Will it work or not? But no, I refuse to use synthetic strings. We have this nice ensemble up there. They're great. So yeah.
Yes, there are some of the newer patches you can barely tell, but they sounded so good that I just had to ask that. Mark Doyle played multiple instruments on this album.
Just about everything.
Yeah, the press release says everything but strings and drums. Who played the drums on this album?
Oh, my drummer, Josh Delaney, who was in the band when I bring the boys out. He's our drummer. He's great. He's fabulous. And yeah, that was it. But the rest of it is, other than the string players and Josh, it's all Mark, all of it. And he's so, he's fabulous because everything he just lays it down, and right the first time. It's great. The bass, the keyboards, piano, great electric guitar player, acoustic guitar player, everything. He spoils you, really. It's a very efficient way to make a record.
Yeah. Ruby Tuesday is a song. Obviously, it resonated for you. You went and bought it. Your first single. Your first single never leaves you. Mine, I had to sneak out of our neighborhood and cross a street I wasn't allowed to cross to go buy my first single, which was "Come Sail Away" by Styx. And
oh my goodness!
and I played the heck out of that. But Ruby Tuesday, there are very cool strings on this one in the bridge, particularly. Tell me about the arrangements. Was it a collaboration? Did you come up with the arrangements? How did that work?
No, I'm sorry, but on all of it, or on just Ruby Tuesday?
Well, overall, but specifically on the bridge of Ruby Tuesday.
No, I would say we didn't stray that far from the original on that song. Not that far. Still keyboard based, and Mark did Mark just did a string arrangement for it. And I said, keep it kind of in keeping with that early Rolling Stones kind of chamber ensemble-esque vibe. You know what I mean? Where sometimes they'd use a harpsichord and things like that. I didn't want to, I love early Rolling Stones. So.
Yeah.
The
Moody Blues up next with Tuesday Afternoon.
That's an interesting, because we almost didn't do that song.
Really?
Yeah, because I always loved Tuesday Afternoon, but the bridge, I was not convinced of that bridge, and it seemed a little airy fairy to me, this way through the fairyland, and it sounded silly when I was singing it. I said, I don't know, Mark, we have to come up with something really different. I mean, I want something that's just going to take you to an unexpected place here. And we noodle around, and I said, wait a minute. Why don't we do this like we did Dark Side? I'm feeling like I want something powerful and dark underneath. So I'm very interested in Vedic astrology, which is the astrology of India. Very interested in it. And part of it's very complex, but one of the things that's part of Vedic astrology are these mantras, these chants that you do, and that you are chanting to the planetary lords of particular planets that rule over particular days. And I thought, Tuesday. Let me see what the chant is for Mars, the ruler of Tuesday. And it was Om Vam Krim Vam Sabha, and I said, that's it. That's perfect. It rhymes. It's deep. And so I got my voice as low as I could possibly go. And then we just doubled it, tripled it, quadrupled it. So I sound like a group of men. I think I scared Mark. But that gave it that driving force underneath. And then I said, let me do some whispering, and let's just make it completely psychedelic. And it'll be great in surround, because then we'll have all those layers that are so nice to hear when you do a surround mix. And that's what we did. And the thing is, I think we conquered it, and it's my favorite part of the song now. It's one of my favorite things. Yeah.
I like the arrangement. I was going to ask you about that because I wrote this down in my notes about the vocals. Were the layered backing vocals, is that all your voice, or is it other voices?
That's all me. Yes, all me. We spent a lot of time layering it's layers upon layers upon layers. And
how many overdubs is that? How many tracks?
I have no idea. You'd have to ask me. I have no idea.
That's amazing. Track 4 is Riverman from Nick Drake. And I wondered, when you cover songs by men or women with very high voices, do you take a different approach to them? Because your voice is very unique.
Because I have different little islands in my voice. I have the deep, very voice, very deep. And then, I have the high, it has to serve the song. We work on keys for a really long time until we find the sweet spot, the spot that really conveys whatever the message of the song is. And with Riverman, though, that was a different challenge, because that it sat nicely in my voice right from the start. I could have sung it in several different keys, but that song's a sacred cow. Nick Drake is a sacred cow. Don't go there. Like, it's just like, don't go there. And don't go there unless it's as good. And nobody's as good as Nick Drake. And especially with the idiosyncratic guitar playing and the string arrangements that he was so known for. So we had to think to ourselves, well, what are we going to do? Because I didn't want to lose the shimmering quality. And I said to Mark, why don't you try it on piano? Why don't you do something just shimmering? And Mark is such a good pianist. His sensibility as a pianist is completely different than his rock guitar self. And he just played something, again, the first time he tried it, so shimmering and beautiful. And that's it, that will work. That's it. And then instead of the strings, I used my vocals to do that. And that's it. But that may be my favorite song. From the first time I heard that song as a teenager, I thought one day I would love to record that song. It's just one of my all-time favorites. It's so haunting and beautiful.
Yeah. One thing it really comes through with this set of songs, and in interviews I've seen and read with you, is just how big of a music fan you are, which is great. It just puts you, yeah. It puts you instantly on the same level as all of us that are out here geeking out about these old songs too.
Yeah. And and I've written inside the liner notes of the record that I needed, Mark and I both, he had family things go on during the lockdown, not necessarily COVID related, but and I had personal loss and just the world in tumult in every way, shape, and form. And I think we both felt that we needed to escape. And these songs, all of these are so close to me, and they were like old friends to me, like family almost. They are, especially the Neil Young, especially that, because I learned how to play guitar on a lot of those Neil Young songs. And those two albums, after the Gold Rush, I played that album so many times. I mainlined it basically. And I love that record. I can't hear him sing some of those songs now. I think he had done, remember when the Unpluggeds were I think it was VH1 Unplugged or MTV?
Yeah, the MTV Unplugged,
and he did an Unplugged, and when he sat down at that pipe organ and started to sing, well, I dreamed I saw the nights and all, I burst into tears. I just brought me right back, something about his work just goes very, very deep.
Yeah.
So, the other one that it was fun to try was the Mamas and the Papas song. I loved, and that was one that I love Mama Cass's voice. She's another part of the recipe that made my voice was that swagger that she had in her voice. And she's a belter, and so, but it was the swagger that I really liked. And but this was a song that was the flip side of I think Monday, and I think I remember it being, or California. It was one of the little 45s, and but it was Michelle that got to sing it. So I thought that I could bring a little bit more of the Cass Elliot sensibility to that song.
Yeah. It's got a feeling. For me, it's one of my favorite interpretations on the album because it's a very haunting version. It has such a contrast to the original because of that haunting quality to it. And this thing came out when you were 8 years old. So, I mean, you've been living with this for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That I still have Mamas and Papas on my iPhone. So when I'm driving in the car and I just let it do the, where it jumps around.
Random, yeah.
Random. It's a random. Just love Mamas and Papas on there. I still love them.
I don't know about you, but the older I get, I have I have found that some of these old songs, I can't even sing them without crying anymore. I don't know what it is, but
Oh,
it's the
I
emotional,
know what it is. Yeah, it's
the
that
time
connection.
travel aspect of it and all of that.
Yeah, yeah. It brings you back to another more innocent time, you know.
Yeah. So you
We're
just
living in
talked to,
frightening times right now in every single way, and I just feel
yeah,
like you wanna go back to a place of innocence.
sure. You talked about Neil Young and you did Don't Let It Bring You Down. It's not maybe the most obvious song to cover from Neil's considerable catalog. Um, what
And I
spoke?
know it's been covered a lot.
Mhm.
That was I almost didn't do it because there's a great Seal cover and of course Annie Lennox. But I had to sing that song. I just had to. And a lot of these songs have a dual thing for me. Not only that I loved them when I was young, but they have a message for me that still resonates very powerfully. And
Mhm.
that's one of those songs that has a very, very important. So if you don't know the song, I don't know how you couldn't, but if you didn't, I guess I've always liked songs that have powerful messages in them without being preachy.
Mhm.
So you walk a fine line there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one to walk too.
And it really is.
You go back to your Pink Floyd fandom with Comfortably Numb, taking
Yeah.
on an iconic song and making it your own. Again, another, it's a risky move when you do this. You changed a little bit of the phrasing in the verses, which was an interesting choice. Was we
Well,
talked
they
about?
speak it. So I mean, so I was sort of speak singing it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
We talked a little bit about your approach to taking on such an iconic song. What was Mark's reaction when you chose this song, or did he suggest it?
Oh, he wanted it too. We both. It was a no. It was like, well, we have to do comfortably numb, and I love that that refrain. I love it, and I've always wanted to record it, and the theme of the record was going back to my youth. That was done a little bit later. It was almost getting into the 80s, so I wanted to keep everything within a sort of late 60s, early 70s time frame, but
Mhm.
I love Pink Floyd and I had to do it. I mean, there's probably many more Pink Floyd songs that I will cover someday. You
Yeah,
know,
that's great. I love it. Of course, your folk roots come out with Judy Collins. As since you've asked again, not one of the biggest songs in her catalog, but coming from the same album, which did Both Sides Now.
yeah.
Was the fact that Collins wrote this song herself a determining factor here, or was it just that you love the song?
I love the song and I love her. And I mean, it's a beautifully written song. She's a good songwriter and a good discoverer of other songwriters as well. And
Mhm.
I just always loved the song. And we did it in a different time signature and than she does it, completely different. And we gave it more of a groove than she gives it. And I used to sing this back in the day when I after I left October Project and I put my own band together and I started going out a little bit on the road and I had made a little demo that I was selling, things like that. I used to do this song, and I I had to do something of Judy because she was a really big influence on me.
Yeah. Then you take on a Beatle with George Harrison's "Beware of Darkness." You got the Stones, you got the Beatles on here. Well, one of the Beatles,
Well,
and
George was my favorite. He was
I
always my favorite.
I think this one's my favorite song on the entire album. I love the way the music just builds and subsides. You get these great contrasts between the quieter and louder parts, and the vocals grow in intensity throughout. Um,
I wanted to make, it was one of the few times Mark and I had a push pull. Mark wanted to put in more of the Harrison-esque flourishes, guitar flourishes, a little bit of
mhm.
that slide, Beatles sounding. And I absolutely, we have to de-Harrison this thing, de-Beatle it, okay? Because I want to make it my own. And I always felt that a bigger sort of crescendo at the end would serve the message of that song. And so that was when I had a very heavy hand in the arrangement of that. And that song, that All Things Must Pass, that whole record has lived inside me. And this past year and a half, I was playing that song. I was playing the actual song, All Things Must Pass, a lot. You know, it helps your soul. And but Beware of Darkness, that's a message that, boy, that's stuck with me all these years. And it's just wise words, very wise. So he was like a message from a wise old uncle, you know. Yeah. Especially Beware of Sadness. What always got me about George too, if you think about him in the midst of all of those lords, those dark lords of rock and roll, like Jimmy Page and, you know, Mick and all those people, and George was so light, you know, he was always wearing white and he was so unlike them. And in anybody else's hands, a lyric like that might have sounded preachy, but George lived it. It was authentic with him. So it never comes off that way with him, ever.
And on the other end of that spectrum, it could come off as trite as well. So
yeah, but yeah,
it doesn't for him. You're right.
No.
We end the album with the great Valerio. I have to admit, I'm not that well versed on Richard and Linda Thompson. Who turned you on to these guys? Because I don't even think it was released outside the UK for many years.
Oh, I think it was a boyfriend, and who was into British folk, and you know, so turned me on to all the British folkies, and then from that Renaissance, of course, Annie Haslam, and so. But I love, as I said earlier, Sandy Denny, Jim Tabor, and I love those Richard and Linda Thompson records. That just blew me away. And everybody, well, not every, you know, Dimming of the Day has been covered so many times. I knew I didn't want to do that. It's done, but nobody had done the Great Valerio, and that's one of my all-time favorites. And I felt again that was a very timely song, a very haunting meditation on fame. And that one, we had to take it away from the Richard and Linda feel, and that, again, that very idiosyncratic Richard Thompson guitar playing. So we decided to make it a keyboard song. And then Mark just does this amazing outro. He surprised me with that. And he just got all very sort of carnival-esque at the end, and with sort of a pipe organy kind of thing. And it's so perfect. So perfect. I just love it.
So you've got this album. It came out July 22nd. And as an artist, you make an album for you, but now that it's out in the world, what's the feedback you're getting? What are your expectations for this thing?
Well, I spent the last couple of days stuffing envelopes with all the pre-sales. I mean, it was like, no, I can't see it anymore. No. And just bags and bags and bags full of CDs. But I'm getting, you know, from the people that have listened on Spotify and iTunes and everything, and the people who've received the record, I'm getting, I mean, these are great songs. And I have such love for them, and I think they maintain the integrity of the original, but they're still, if you're not going to bring something new, don't do a cover. You know, it's one of the reasons why, much as I love her, and I do love Carly Simon, I don't ever do Carly Simon because I sound a little bit like her. You can hear there's a bit of, it's our vibrato. So I don't feel like there's anything new that I could bring to one of her songs that she hasn't already done. And so I love her, but I've never covered her. But I want people to just escape and remember how much they love these songs. And I just want to give them some joy and some refuge and maybe a little escape. That's it. And maybe to a newer audience, a younger audience that doesn't know some of these songs, like the Richard and Linda song. I want to bring some of these people and younger people may not know Nick Drake. I'd love to bring those artists to a whole new audience because they're fabulous.
Sure. One of the things I thought about when listening to this was how cool it would be to hear this version of Can't Get It Out of My Head first, because there were many years when I had no idea what Jeff was singing. That whole William Tell and Ivanhoe, that whole section there.
I twisted that line around just a little tiny bit. Because I felt that the word Ivanhoe was easier to hold a note on. So he doesn't end with, but anyway.
Right. He ended on Lancelot, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know what he was. I had no idea what he was singing. I didn't have the lyrics, and I would hear it on the radio, and I'm like, I have no idea what that line is. I couldn't even make something up and like just go, kind of mouth it and fake it. But I had no idea. But so I thought it was cool that you can actually hear the words clearly for that one, and how the younger folks listening to it for the first time will actually hear what what those names are. So it's very interesting. I've enjoyed this album, listening to it, getting to know it a little bit, finding the little intricacies and things like that, the arrangements and the differences. And I got to say, your voice is, I hope you take this as a compliment. It's meant it. You got this rich, smooth, full, buttery, rich voice that reminds me of, it's not the same tone. It's a guy, but it's like Gordon Lightfoot to me. It just hits me in that sweet
You're
spot.
not the first person who said that to me. I've heard that many, many times. Yes. There's like we both have sort of that Cabernet kind of sound to our voice, and there's a richness. And I like other singers that have that quality too. Mary Travers had that quality. And I tend to like women with lower voices. I tend to like Linda Thompson had a bit of a richer kind of a voice, and Sandy as well. I don't like, there's a kind of a girl singer that's out there. They all sound, every commercial I hear, everybody sounds like this now. They all just sing. It's like, sing, open your mouth and sing.
Yeah.
I mean, the country singers all have big, beautiful voices. And anyway, it's just it's a style, I guess. But it's funny because Anne Rice gave me it was an interesting compliment on her Facebook page. She spent one Sunday afternoon just posting everything I had ever done, and she said, I found the voice I've been looking for my whole life. Why? It's neither male nor female. It's perfectly androgynous. Thank you. I think, but she meant, I know what she meant.
Yeah.
And I have I'm not even really a contralto sometimes. I feel more like a tenor, but anyway.
But it's you. That's who you are. It's unique. It's great. I know you're doing some live shows. How many of these new songs are you doing at the live shows?
Oh, well, we're doing all, we're going to do them all.
Okay.
And, yes, sirree. And so, obviously I have to do a few October Project songs. And, we pepper the show with some of my stuff and October Project, but the bulk of the show, I have been dying to play this record out live with a full band, and I can't wait. So I will be at City Winery, New York on August 9th. I know it's a Tuesday. I know it's August. I know it's New York, but it's going to be sort of the official party to release the record. And if you're in New York, where are you based, by the way?
I'm in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, you're in Orlando. Okay. Well, if you happen to be in New York, the listeners are in New York, it's going to be a beautiful night. And City Winery is a great place. You can have a wonderful meal, and they have great wine. And then later in the month, we go to City Winery Boston and the Sellersville Theater right near me in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And then we go up again. We go up to Plymouth, Massachusetts. If you go to maryfahl.com, my whole tour is there, and my web store is there, and check out lots of things and hear little samples of the songs from the record.
You get to hear the songs. You get to order the albums and get them signed and personalized, which is very cool. A lot of
That's what I've
artists
been
don't do
doing for the past week.
it's a lot of work for you, but it's
Oh
a
my
very
God.
nice touch. It's a very
Yeah.
nice touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great getting to talk to you about this record. I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I hope it does very well for you. It's maryfahl.com, as you mentioned. Are you not a big social media person? Are you on any of the social medias?
Well, I am. I'm not. I wouldn't call myself a big. I've been trying because it's very important in this day and age. If you're indie, especially, to get the word out. You know, Facebook and Instagram, all those things. You really owe it to the work you did on the record to get out and promote that record on those social media sites. So I have to get out and do it. And so I do. I have a social media manager who's always nudging me, like, more, I want more. So yeah, he cracks the whip. And,
gotta have content. Gotta have it.
Gotta have it, right.
All right. So look up Mary Fahl are you on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook?
Oh, Instagram, Twitter. Oh, and they talked me into that land of the crazies, TikTok.
Oh no.
Oh God, yeah. I said, but nobody that likes me is going to go on TikTok. They said, not yet.
Yeah.
So yes, I actually am there on TikTok.
Mary Fahl TikTok. I would not have predicted that one. That would not have been foremost of my mind.
Yeah.
Mary, you've been lovely. I've really enjoyed talking to you about this album. Again, I hope it does great for you. Thank you so much for your time.
Dude, thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure. Thank you.